When we lead with love, we carry it 24/7. And when we teach with love, we make sure our students don't forget it. To be black and to educate is to be superhero without the applause. It's to show up and show out no matter the cause. It's to play for the students no matter the winner. Because when we work arm in arm, the impact is bigger. Welcome to Untenured Podcast, where educators have a space to speak their truth. So tap in and listen to the very voices that mold our youth.
So blessings, YouTube community. Welcome to episode 7 of our Untenured podcast. And as you know, here in our house, speaking your truth can never go left because it's your right. And I just want to start by saying, where's Brooklyn at? We've gone to Kentucky, we've gone to Irvington, New Jersey, to Philly, and we are so hyped to finally be back in the best borough with this dope brother, Dr. Sean F. Brown, that's representing Brownsville. And a little bit about this brother. He's a Brownsville native, Riverdale Projects to be exact, a Panamanian American who's a veteran high school principal with over 17 years of experience, and he began his teaching career as a sped teacher. He's a hip hop head, a Brooklyn College professor whose curated course curriculum is a mixtape. We'll talk a little bit about that. But this brother is a barber, a DJ, a boxer, a ball player, a public speaker, a quantitative data analyst, a man of faith, husband, father, mentor, PhD holder, and author. His dissertation, Black Males Matter, the educational marathon continues, was Nipsey Hussle inspired. And if you want to foster inclusive learning environments and create equitable pathways for Black students, his book, The Green Book for Black Folks in Education, is for you. And so he's here with us today. Tell us why, when it comes to Black male leadership, they not like us. He declares that no institution, educational or religious, will ever put him in any box or remove his culture. And so we are so hyped to welcome again Dr. Sean F. Brown. Or should I say, bienvenidos, y que lo que?
Oh my God.
All right, so
that was amazing. That was amazing.
Well, low-key, it was a Brangelina of some of my IG stalking of your dope posts mixed with what I gathered, because this brother and I have never met in person. But I always try to big up Black male leadership, Black female leadership in a dope way. So I hope that felt like a befitting intro.
That was beautiful. That was amazing. You are gifted.
Well, thank you so much. Well, listen, I can only speak like that if you lived like that. And so thank you for living your journey on this educational experience and coming today to share it with us. And so I want to start off first, the Biggie experience. Shout out to this exhibit in Brooklyn. Did you get to go? Did you get to go to the Biggie experience yet in Brooklyn? It's like a museum that they remade into his.
I didn't get a chance to.
All right, don't worry. Listen, y'all, he's a principal. Don't judge. He don't have time like that. But when that brother gets time, he's going over to the Biggie experience. And I actually want to start off with one of his quotes. Because one of our guests, Undeterred, episode 3, he spent a lot of time talking about the intro to Juicy. And literally, when Biggie, not It Was All a Dream, but when he first starts talking over the beat and says, this goes out to all the teachers that said I would never amount to nothing. And so I want to kick off with that vibe and that energy, because your testimony and your journey is a supreme evolution of that Biggie intro. And say, why did you choose Uncompromising? And tell us a little bit about who you are that I didn't describe in your intro.
Wow. So, yeah, Uncompromising. A little bit about myself. I was, as you said, I'm Panamanian born. Both my parents are Panamanian, and I come from Brownsville. I was born in Brookdale Hospital, and I went directly to Riverdale Projects. And there's a lot of people who are familiar with that community, but there's some that aren't. And just to let you know about Brownsville, is one of the most densely populated housing project communities in all of New York City, and growing up in that environment, it takes a lot of, you have to have the ability not to compromise your standards, to stand on what you stand on, and to believe what you believe, because you have to face the world when you step outside of your house in Brownsville. There's no running. And that's why the saying goes, Brownsville never ran.
Never will. Yes.
There's nowhere to go. So once you begin to, what I've seen over time is, once you begin to compromise, you lose yourself. You have no identity and you can't stand on anything. And so from a very young age, I began to have that mindset that I'm not going to compromise who I am, no matter what I go through. And in my mindset, if I can go through that where I grew up, then school, education, leadership, none of that is going to change anything.
Yeah.
So,
And it's
yeah,
all conquerable. Never ran, never will. And so you
that's right.
started your journey in education, I believe, in 1998. Yes?
1998, 1999 is
1998.
when I
All right.
started
I'm
working
not
with
I'm not
teenagers.
trying to date a brother. All right. But just hang in there with me, right? So as a hip hop head, I took the liberty of looking at some of the EPs that dropped that year. And so I'm gonna name some EPs and tell me if any resonate with you, with your journey or a life story that you want to share. So in 1998, we had Roots of Evil by Cool G Rap came out. We had The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which dropped. We had Black Star, which was Mos Def and Talib's collab album, and then The
Yeah.
Swarm by Wu-Tang Clan. Those came out
Yes.
in 1998. Any of those jumping out at you for any particular
Yeah,
reason?
man. Now you're speaking my language. That's
Come
when
on.
Nori came out, DMX, Tupac, Biggie, East Coast,
Yes.
West Coast rivalries. But to be honest with you, I was down with MOP because they're from Brownsville and that
Okay.
whole Annie Up theme. Also grew up under Brand Nubian because they talked a lot
Okay.
about Black empowerment and that
Yes.
whole 5% Nation thing.
Yes.
So that's my music. That's my
All right.
music.
Well, I wasn't trying to test the brother. I'm just trying to connect from afar. And so I think you'll love this next question. KRS-One, My Philosophy, right? Love that. Boogie Down Productions all day. I'm not a Bronx rapper, but I do respect what the Bronx did for the culture of hip hop. And there's been a lot of focus and emphasis on culturally relevant pedagogy. And we've even had a lot of those convos here in our podcast. But what I love and I'm excited to do as a first, because we love first here at Sadies, is talk about culturally relevant leadership. And one of the things that I saw on your IG page as a Brooklyn College professor, that you made a curriculum that really is a mixtape. And so you took Jay-Z's Hard Knock Life Volume 2 as a way to talk about Title I funding. You took one of my favorite groups of conscious rap. It actually was the second album I was able to use my allowance to go buy at Tower Records, not to talk about me, but People Every Day by Arrested Development, how you use that one to talk about using procession effectively, and even The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill for creating programming that serves all students. So can you talk a little bit about why you go so hard in the paint for integrating hip hop culture into curriculum and experience, whether it's for college students or for high school scholars?
Well, I think that when you go into most educational institutions, you feel as if that you are the alternative and everyone is trying to find a way to reach out to you and make you feel comfortable. And that in and of itself can be very oppressive because you start to feel like people are doing weird things that they think symbolize you. Like they'll go, yo, 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 what's up? And
Yeah,
you're like,
I
I don't
don't.
speak like that. That's not what I do. Even though I come from where I come from, we're not a monolith. We're very different people. And so when you're given the opportunity to have educational freedom and design, of course, the way that you want it to be, I said, well, we're not going to place culture into the curriculum. We're going to place the curriculum into my culture. So it's all about the culture first, and then we'll learn something. It's like that's how hip hop is, right? There was always a deeper message behind the lyrics, and
Yeah,
then you get it afterwards. Like Brenda's
yeah.
having a baby, talking about the ways in which Black women are treated in different neighborhoods and how they should value themselves. So for me, I told myself, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go 100% all the way, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
it's been really a vibe in the college courses. Like I get to DJ, play music, we learn a little bit, we have fun, and I think that's what hip hop really represents is
Yeah.
this idea of true inclusiveness.
Yes.
Everyone's invited to the party,
Yes.
and I had a really good time. I had a really
Yeah.
good time.
And what you're capturing in your response is this idea of authentic learning before we took on the very Anglo-Saxon European way of schooling, right? Everyday life was learning. And just to vibe off of your comment even further, one of the things that we stand proudly on is we're not a bookstore in a community, we're a community bookstore. So the same way you talk about not infusing culture in the community, but putting, not infusing culture into the curriculum, but put the reverse, we're doing the same here in our space. So it has to fit what we're doing, otherwise it doesn't belong, and not the other way around. And so I love that you're taking that non-traditional approach, because it's in the non-traditional that authentic happens. And one of the other things I peeped on your IG with your innovative methods for leading in your school community, from Brazilian jiu-jitsu, fresh fades during lunch. Shout out to a principal giving haircuts during lunch, because that's a part of the culture where deep conversations happen in barbershops and hair salons, student-led podcasts. I saw you even had, and if this would have ever happened in middle school, I would have probably loved the Middle Passage era, wink, wink, even more. But you had a lunchtime sing aloud of Keisha Cole's Love. Like, they're just singing and loudly, unapologetically, and even Feed the Block Gang and more, which is, I believe, a food service project that you do with a group of students. So can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration for these innovative experiences that you're curating in your school for students?
Yeah, my idea was always like, how do I bring my neighborhood into the school so it doesn't feel like a scary place for parents to visit? It doesn't feel like dads aren't allowed to come in and be themselves and be their authentic selves. And, our people, sometimes we're loud. Sometimes, we disagree with something that you have to say. We can't always translate that into aggressive. And this person needs to be suspended, because that's not how we are as folks. We communicate differently. We see things differently. And the mindset is, if I create a community that feels very familiar to what they go home to, or their surroundings, then they're going to want to come to school. And staff members are going to want to be a part of the school as well. Something else that I do is I scout talent, my teacher talent, from the community. I speak to people that are safety agents and paraprofessionals, and we have a real deep conversation about purpose besides your job. And I get them back into school, and they go into leadership programs. Most of my staff comes from Brownsville or Bushwick.
That's beautiful.
It changes the dynamic with the students, because when you have a challenge with that student in the classroom, I just saw you at church. I saw you at the laundromat. I know your brother because I went to middle school with him. So now we can have a different level of accountability. And I think that's really transformed the school culture. It's not, it's us together. And the other thing that I realized too is you need allies. And I have some of the dopest teachers that are allies that are not necessarily from the community, that understand the work. They're not there for a title. They don't get a bunch of recognition, but they work really, really hard because they care about the community. And that's the mindset. Bring the neighborhood into the school.
And I love that. One, because it, like you said, it fosters and elevates this idea of school, community, and culture. But then you don't have to spend, not to paint with a broad stroke, but you don't have to spend a lot of time with PD on decoding and unlearning, and because you are of that cloth. You know the challenges because you live in that community, you were raised in that community, etc. And so shout out to the Dr. Sean F. Brown method. If you're a principal and you're listening to this, use that position of authority to think about curating, recruiting, and pouring into local community members. Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe that you call them even the secret superheroes in education, the school safety, the custodian, etc. This idea of it taking a village, right, to teach.
Right. And in our community, we didn't respect people based on the title they had. You don't treat the custodian different than you treat the teacher or the administrator. My best friend was a custodian. And the reason that we respect each other, and I was just like around the block, the old head that's sitting on a corner that's 40 or 50 or 60 years old, you respect him simply because of his experiential knowledge, not because of what degrees he has. And when you're in school, staff members that work in the cafeteria, safety and everything else, they feel that level of hierarchy in the way that you speak to them and the tone that you use. And those are the folks that know when the fights are going to happen. They know when the kids are going to cut class.
Their
They're
ears.
able to solve so many of your problems, but you treat them, sometimes they're treated as second class citizens. And the thing about our folks is, you don't ask me no questions, I won't say anything to you.
Yes.
You don't think I know anything, so I'll let you go and figure it out by yourself. And my secret sauce has always been the support staff, 100%.
Yes. And so I love that vibe of like concentric leadership. Yes, you're at the helm, but what you curate is more of a circular vibe of communal power, authority, and really just culture creating. And so one of the things that you mentioned that I also love, you know, how sometimes in our culture, certain non-Anglo-Saxon or European ways of teaching and learning are deemed aggressive, right, or inappropriate for a school setting. And so can you speak a little or maybe tell us one of the most misrepresented behaviors of Black boys, particularly, that you have experienced?
The importance of movement. Boys having a child, especially a boy, sit down for 30 minutes and 40 minutes in a classroom and not move is painful. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with ADHD, their attention span, or any their learning disabilities. I get the students to stand up and move. I get them to walk around. And sometimes, if we're being honest, because this is a term called adultifying our young boys, specifically when they get to middle school, you feel like they're just too big to walk around, and you get nervous because of preconceived notions of the Black body that Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about.
Yes.
So for us, when you see me boxing with the students or doing jujitsu or cutting hair, they need to move.
Yes.
They need movement because they're living. Think about it, especially kids in New York City. You live in an apartment building, very little movement. You have to go upstairs into the house at a certain time because the things are going outside. You come into the building, now you have to go to this class and you have to sit down, and that's not healthy for their bodies at all. So movement is big. And also something that's big is, I believe in this idea of the extended African family. You have to get that uncle in, you have to get that cousin in, because that's the person that has the most influence over that young male. Sometimes it's not mom or dad.
Yeah.
And so when we invite folks into the school, I always ask, who's the person that has the most influence in this family? And it could be anybody. It could be a grandmother. For me, it was my grandmother, right? So making sure that the entire family feels included helps as well. And
Yes.
also, my secret that I will tell all educators is vulnerability. When I start to talk about my dad being locked up, or me being shot at, or me being stabbed, or me being locked up, or seeing my friends die in front of me, it shifts the tone. It shifts the tone. So I think for a lot of us who have made it from lower class to middle class and we've gotten educations, we feel almost ashamed of our narrative and we hide it from our boys. And then they feel like they can't talk with us because we can't relate, but we can. We just have to be proud about our scars, not ashamed of my scars. Anybody from my block could tell you the things that I've been through. So why be ashamed of it? Use it as a way to engage. So that's what I do.
As a leverage for engagement. And I love that you talked about movement too, because it made me think back to my teaching days and having predominantly Black boys when I taught at P-Tech, which was then Paul Robeson campus. One year, and brother, I know you know Ant, so you can fact check to make sure this is not capping, right? He'll tell you, I took all the desks out my classroom and I taught Algebra 2, Algebra, and Geo, and I made it a 360 room with all whiteboards. So they didn't even sit. There was a few chairs for those who wanted to sit, but I had them moving. And I really felt like that was one of the most supremely effective years I had in the classroom. Something just as small as honoring that movement is needed. So shout out to Dr. Sean F. Brown. Some misrepresented behaviors, let these bodies move, right? Bring in the bodies that are most influential to their lived experience, not the ones you feel comfortable with, but the ones they feel comfortable with, and vulnerability, because that's always a lever for engagement. All right, super dope. Love that you're dropping jewels for us. And with that same thinking in mind, what do you think is the biggest similarity, having been a Black boy navigating the K-12 public school system, that you see between you in high school and the Black male high schools you serve today? Something that you struggled with that still seems like current high school Black males are struggling with today?
Something that I struggled with, and a lot of my Black boys struggle with it, and I still struggle with it, is We like to confront disrespect in a very toxic way, and we don't tolerate it. And what happens with a lot of our young Black boys is they experience so many microaggressions and so much passive aggressive behavior, and they don't have the words to articulate what they're feeling and sensing, but they're right about what they're feeling and sensing.
Yes.
And so when they don't feel loved and they don't feel respected, it's hard for them to learn. It's hard for them to receive instruction
Yeah.
and to feel valued by you. And I struggle with it now, where you can read a person, and it's a spiritual thing with Black and brown folks. You can read a person's energy. You know if they value you or if they don't value you. And now when this person turns around and tries to teach you something, there's an issue there.
Yeah.
And what I try and teach my children is, I don't care how the package is being sent. I just care about the content. That's all I care about, because I know you don't value me, and I know how you view me based on my hair or, me wearing a hoodie or a shiesty, which means nothing. I need to know that content so I can move forward. And that takes a lot of emotional intelligence that I think a lot of our young Black boys struggle with.
Yeah.
We view sometimes, our young Black boys, as well as older men, we view emotional intelligence as being soft. We view code switching as being soft. When, Jay-Z says it, I teach you how to move in a room full of vultures.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for everything.
Yeah.
And you can't fight your way to through every conflict.
Yeah.
Some conflicts you have to walk away from. Some is a conversation. And sometimes you just got to read a person and go, there's nothing I can say to get this person to value me, and I need to just move in a different direction. But it's a lot of psychological warfare that our kids are facing, because they know the truth about the educational system and about some of the teachers that are in front of them, and it's hard for them to navigate that.
Yeah.
So that, and also, like Anna tell you, like in our time growing up in Brownsville, the kids who played sports got a pass. I used to box and I played ball. So when you travel to different neighborhoods, people would leave you alone. It's not like that anymore. It's very hard to navigate New York City without going to Canarsie and understanding that that's a Wu neighborhood and you can't be over there because there's a lot of Crips.
Yeah.
If you go to Bushwick, it's a lot of Bloods. And being in that environment and being strong enough to stand on your own has become very difficult for Black and brown boys. And that's a lot of the work that I do, is figuring out how to get them to be their own person in that type of environment.
And to navigate it. Well, I don't know, brother. Can you see my very few but present scripted questions? Because that was my next one. It was, what do you think is the biggest difference? And I think you already hit on it, right? Because you talked about almost this cloak of protection, having been a scholar athlete or a student athlete, navigating your era of being a high school Black male. But today, that cloak is not as powerful or even present as a form of protection as you're navigating life. And so what you're doing to help young people navigate an experience you haven't lived yourself, duly noted, profoundly appreciated. And I wish more that are hearing this or have access to you would tap into helping young people have that type of resource. And so that's also a perfect segue to another direct quote I have for you, because you said, read when you wake up, read when you feel sad, read when you're going to sleep, listen to audiobooks while resting, fall in love with learning and knowledge. Your brain is thirsting for it. And so I'm here to do, I'm not shameless, a shame-free plug for the Green Book. And for anyone who knows the culture, and for those of you who are watching who do not, I'm speculating, and I hope I'm not inaccurate, that it was based off of, we had an elder in the community donate a motorist guide copy of the Green Book, which essentially was a driving while Black guide in the 40s, the 30s through the 50s, and they came out with other editions as they were able to add more safe places. But I believe your book for Black folks in education is a play on that, right? And one of the things I love about the book, and I don't need to read a brother's words back to him, but I want some people to catch the vibe. There's 3 chapters. And what I love is that they are broken down into the 3 grade bands or grade level experiences of elementary, middle, and high. What I love even more is because although I have no teaching experience in middle school, I go like this to middle school teachers, because I feel like that's the roughest grade band to lead and teach in. And the fact that you make middle school analogous to the Middle Passage, I just think is super dope and fire. But I want to just read to you directly from Dr. Brown's preface. He says, historically, the Green Book for Black folks equipped readers for safe passage while traveling throughout the United States. I hope this book will serve as a tool to avoid the pitfalls and identify the landmines purposely designed to support agendas that are not in line with true purpose of education, which is freedom and equality. And so, I mean, the supreme mic drop for me was the first sentence in chapter 1. The public educational system is a war zone for Black children. Boom, bam, bam. Tell me why you started off with that powerhouse and very true statement. War zone, brother?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, right? And I think you understand this more than most. Once you've gone through the system and you've come out on the other side and you've been in certain rooms with certain folks and you've heard things said to you directly, not a mistake, not a misinterpretation, you go, oh, wow, I get it. And so for myself, I think for Black and brown folks, they have to understand who the enemy is. They have to understand what they're up against.
Yeah.
It's not even a matter of race as much as a matter of going against a system, an institution that's intentionally designed. Every educational policy, every regent's test, everything you can think of is designed to harm your child. And
Yep.
I think I wanted to start off that way so I can alert everyone. There's a scripture that talks about, like, once you see somebody in danger, you have to say something. You like, it's your obligation as a brother to protect your brother in Ezekiel 33. And so I wanted to start off that way because I feel like we drop kids off at school with the assumption that this person has, the teacher or the institution has high morals, high ethics. They're going to tell the truth. They care about our kids. And it's very naive. It's very naive to not know someone or a system and say, oh, you're going to do right because you have a degree and you work in a school. That's not how it works. And our children are going into these different environments not understanding the hidden curriculum and the hidden norms that they're supposed to be adhering to. They don't know. So they try and interact with folks in the building as if it's you, and it's not you. And that's when you see the childhood and the innocence leave their eyes.
Yes.
And now you have to do a bunch of cleanup. So we have to be a little bit more proactive in preparing folks and our children about what they're walking into. Very dangerous.
And you even talk about the conditioning that's centered on submission, right? And producing docile learners, and that all of this is intentional by design. And, you know, one of the other things that I know you delve into deeply, and I'm gonna try not to give it all away because it's a dope read, and I want to encourage school districts, leaders, parents, whoever you are, if you know have a Black child that's in education, that this is a book for you too. You talk about, and Isabel Wilkerson talks about this too in her book Caste, about the undetectable caste system that even lives in educational systems. So as my grandmother used to say, you don't send your child to school to be educated, you send them to be socialized. And even in doing that, you need to be very careful, because how we are having them learn about how they can take up space and where their voice is honored matters. And so shout out to the Green Book. One last thing I desperately want to ask you, making middle school analogous to the Middle Passage. How did that idea come about? Because I think it's brilliant.
Well, I study large data sets. It's this large data set, the HSLS, and it's a high school longitudinal study that tracks students over decades and their progress throughout middle school, high school, college, and so on and so forth. And what the studies show is that the largest drop-off for our children is at middle school. And you think about what happens to our children at middle school. At the middle school level, your son or your children are going to go from in kindergarten to the 5th grade, from being everyone's baby. He has a beautiful haircut. He has a beautiful smile. He's oiled up, probably with cocoa butter and Vaseline every single day.
Okay.
And now he gets to middle school, and facial hair and puberty and dreads start to grow, and his voice deepens. Now he starts to remind folks of preconceived notions of a super predator.
He becomes a threat.
He becomes a threat. And he doesn't know why the teachers are so upset, or she doesn't know why the teachers are treating him that way. And so what happens is academically, they start to disengage and they start to be accused of certain things that they didn't do and they didn't say. And that's when studies show most students start to decline academically is in the 5th and 6th grade.
Yeah.
And with parents, what we have to realize is we don't pull back as they get older. We lean in more intellectually. So no, you're not going to be at every single activity, and no, you can't drop them off every single time. But the conversations need to be a little bit deeper as they get older. And you have to ask them about their experiences. How did you feel? What did that make you think? You have to teach them social skills, how to read people. It's a really good book called Studying Human. It's the Law of Human Nature that I'm reading right now. And it helps you to really start reading small nuanced behaviors in folks around you. And it's something that I'm teaching my children because those are the lessons that our children don't understand. And then they run into problems as they get older. So middle school, the hormones, the smells, the girlfriends, the fights, it gets crazy. And we have to lean in a little bit more.
All the above. All right, brother. Well, you just, again, I think you're looking at my screen here because I was going to ask, what are you currently reading? And you just told us Law of Human Nature. A sister just scribbled it down because I'm going to add it to my TBR list. When you finish that book, can you share real fast some books that are on your to be read list? Like they're sitting in a pile. You love that book stack and you're going to get to it when you get to it.
So I've been reading, I was reading The Law of Human Nature. I was reading, Bettina Love.
Punished for Dreaming.
Punished for Dreaming. Something that I want to read is, my wife was reading it. I think it's called The Water Dancer by Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yes, we have that book here. It's really good.
And right now, I'm actually, because I'm transitioning into a new school, I'm going back to read some of Barack's work and Ta-Nehisi's work. It's a book that he wrote, Ta-Nehisi, when we were 8 years in power. And I wanted to just look at the way that he transitioned into leadership in order to prepare myself for a different environment. And actually, I'm writing a lot. And a book that I'm writing I'm thinking about really getting into is called Sheep's Clothing. And I want to talk about the way that imposters work in urban school settings. And they dress in sheep's clothing. Oh, yeah, that's where we're going.
Brother, we need you to drop a pre-order link because I'm ready to stock that book, promote that book, plug that book, The Sheep's Clothing. You heard it here first. We got an inside scoop on this podcast. And what you're describing is certainly a prevalent fact in our school community. Those who are acting like they're about the people, for the people, and some of them are melanated. If I could really preach the preach, because speaking your truth can never go left. Can't wait to read that book, brother, sincerely. So quick question. At what age did you have your first Black teacher, or let alone Black principal? Because you do represent, I hate this metaphor, but you do represent a unicorn, right? Not just for the neighborhood you grew up in, but Black male principalship is less than 9%. Currently, in terms of nationally, forget about New York, but nationally. So do you remember if and when you ever had your first Black teacher or principal?
My first Black teacher is Miss Lucas, PS 41 in Brownsville, Brooklyn. She was my first, she was my third and fourth. She was my second, she was my Miss Cornelius.
Okay, take it back.
Grade.
Yes, okay.
And then Miss Lucas, the third grade.
Perfect. And ever a Black male teacher or no?
Man, I didn't have a Black male teacher until Mr. Harmon and Mr. Young in high school.
Wow. And what about a Black principal, male or female?
No.
All right. Well, listen, that's one of the questions we ask every guest so that as viewers are watching, they can see some of the trends of what's going on in the public education system. All right. So let's switch back over to being a hip hop head. Name an artist, past or present, whose swag matches your educational style. Like if we had to take Dr. Sean and put him in an artist, and listen, you're allowed to combine and do a little bit of him and a little bit of her, and a little bit of that. But if you had to put your educational swag into a current artist, who would you be picking, past or present?
Oh man.
All right, stumping a brother.
I love Ghostface.
Oh.
I love his vocabulary. I love his uniqueness. I love his boldness. I know this is a weird one, but this is just my dude. Sean Price from the Boot Camp Click.
Okay.
He's from Brownsville.
I thought you were going to say Slick Rick.
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not
for
that.
for his storytelling.
Oh, storytelling, definitely. And to me, the greatest, I know there's a lot of debate about it. Nah, sorry.
30 years of Illmatic. Come on.
I'm sorry. He's the dude, man.
No,
I like lyrics.
No sorries needed. We embrace it. All right. So under that umbrella, do you have a hype song? So one thing we do here at Sadies, our Untenured podcast, we create an Untenured podcast guest hype song list. So every artist, every guest gets their hype song added to a playlist. What can we add to that list on behalf of Sean F. Brown?
Annie Up, MOP.
Annie Up. All right, done. All right, we adding that, and that'll be actually your backdrop music when we drop this episode. Perfect. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you, you know, on a more serious note, when we think about the dopeness of where your journey has had you land currently, because you're still ascending, what does support look like for you as a Black male educator, in your opinion? Whether you're a principal or a teacher, like what does support look like for you to sustain and have attrition not be an issue in your role?
So actually, the reason that I'm transitioning to Uniondale is for that very reason. What helps me is transparency and honesty and truth and unconditional love. And Dr. Akil, she's my new supervisor, and she's the superintendent for all of Uniondale. I hope you guys get a chance to meet her when I invite you to the school. She is a maverick, and she's honest, and she's to the point, and she's not playing any games about this job. And so for myself, I don't do well with the politics. I don't do well with the gossip and the he said, she said. Again, I come from a certain place, and everything is very straightforward. So what made me want to walk away, and I was very close to doing so actually, is just dealing with the politics, because you never understand what's being said, what's happening behind closed doors. And so for myself, I wanted to be in an environment where I could be coached and led and trained to be excellent in a very transparent, truthful space. And Dr. Akil provided that from the first conversation I had with her. And so I'm really excited about it. I don't plan on going anywhere else for a very, very long time. And something that because sometimes when I'm doing this, I feel like I'm just talking to you. I know there's a lot of other people listening. All Black men are not meant to be deans. All Black men are not meant to be coaches. We're not all Joe Clark. I'm not from the Green Mile. I'm not a magical Negro that's going to take all your pain away and make you feel comfortable. You know, like we're put in these different boxes and state. Like, for example, you know, Anthony or Ant being an athlete and transitioning into this position, he's always been this intelligent. He's always been that smart. He just chose to follow his passion, which was sports.
Yes.
Don't now make us out to be the coach. That leave that alone. Like, it's intellect first. Think about Kemet. Think about our origin as Black men. We're very, very intelligent folks when we're engaged and we're invited to be in those spaces. And there's a paraprofessional, there's a school aide, there's an SSA agent right now that has the potential to be a superintendent, but they need someone to see that genius and not just put them in a certain stereotype. So those are the things that make a lot of my colleagues that are Black men want to leave the profession.
Yeah. And so you're making me think, once we somehow magically address that issue of recruitment and retainment of Black male educators and in leadership, then it's about the experience they have once they're going through their teacher prep program, right? Because that also can weed some people out prematurely who might be beautiful and perfect for our Black and brown babies. And so imagine then, as a follow-up to that question, if teacher prep programs were to get remixed, what do you think should be some requirements for certification in doing right by Black and brown children as a Black and brown educator in the making?
Besides, I'm happy you asked this question. Besides teacher training being remixed, I believe that superintendents and those who are at the central office, there needs to be something in place where there's another retraining of what that leadership should look like, because that's where it starts, right?
Yeah,
So all of the cultural relevant stuff that we're talking about needs to happen at that level.
yeah,
So you're able to identify talent a little bit better. And you're
yeah.
able to understand social emotional intelligence a little bit better. In terms of teacher training, for myself, teaching at Brooklyn College, I'll be in a room speaking with Hasidic Jews, Orthodox Jews, Muslims, folks from the Asian community, Caribbean folks. When you're honest about the elephant in the room, but you're not judgmental about it, because we do that sometimes. Like you said, sometimes people who look like you, skin folk is not kinfolk. And there's
Yes.
some folks who don't look like you that really love Black and brown
Right.
children.
Yes.
There has to be a level of objectivity when the conversation happens, and a level of intellect, and we got to remove the emotions. Now, when you have these conversations about cultural relevance, it's very emotional and one-sided, and folks who have ideas can't really say anything because of the climate we're in. But when you
Yeah.
make it based on research and you make it objective and you open the discussion for everyone to have a part in it, it helps a lot.
Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Yeah. All right. So we heard it here first. And I love what you are commenting on about really, you know, it's about consciousness, not color, right? Because we really need to think about putting people before our young people that are really about pushing them forward, whole rounded education, embedded and culturally responsive practices, and really allowing them to bring their truth and their reality and voice into their learning. I'm going to flip it for a second and ask, but I think I know the answer. Do you have a pet peeve as a Black male educator?
You're gonna get
I
me in
got a
trouble. These
chuckle. I think
questions
I
are
know
like,
the answer, but feel free to give me a new one because I'm sure the list is long.
man, pet peeves as a Black male educator. Um, One of my pet peeves is the parents who are trying to live through their child,
Mm.
because you weren't cool. Now you're buying your kid $300 sneakers and they're not passing their classes. You're trying to fulfill some. You didn't sit at the cool table, so now you want to push your child to fight everybody because you didn't fight anybody. And the guys around my neighborhood, and we talked about, I don't know if we talked about this yet, but the guys in my neighborhood who were considered really, really tough, they were great parents. They took their
Mm.
children to school and they demanded their children be excellent. I think about my dad, who recently passed away,
Yes.
and full transparency, he was one of those guys. He was out there. He told me, and the reason I did well in school is because of this. He said, if you ever come to visit me and you're not doing well in school and you're in trouble, anything else, you're gonna have to deal with me when I come out.
Mm-mm.
That's how much power he had, and that's
Yeah.
how real he was as a person. So when I see parents trying to befriend their children, and they're wearing matching J's, and coming up to the school to fight and everything else, I'm like, you corny. You're telling on yourself. You're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
really about that life.
Yeah.
And that's a pet peeve for me. The other thing that's a pet peeve for me as a Black male educator is,
People pleasing.
yeah, I just like, dude, man.
I knew that
like
was.
like you got to get to a point where you stand for something. Like you have to have some integrity, and you can't live your life just trying to fit into all these different boxes that they're getting you to jump into. The truth
Yeah.
is that the people that you're performing for, those just aren't your people, and you need to find your tribe somewhere else.
Hmm.
I've been there. So the people pleasing, and also the way that sometimes as educators, as Black men, we can't get united on things. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm on your side. We might have a different religious background, or sexual identity or preference, or whatever you want to call it, but we're still on the margins. I'm
Yes.
not your enemy, you know.
Yes.
So that's something that it just doesn't make any sense.
Well,
Doesn't.
listen, this is the perfect segue to our first of 3 micro segments. Our first one here on Untenured is called Oh Hell No. And that's when our guest gets to pick either a current event or something that is burning on their heart and mind that they just want to say, oh hell no, to publicly. And I think you chimed in on this a little bit with your pet peeve, but for oh hell no, you wanted to talk about students that are acting tough and are not. Like an emphatic oh hell no to our young people who feel like they have to play that role and they not about that life. What say
Yeah.
you? Tap in.
It's okay to be smart. It's okay. It's okay to just be in the sports. It's okay to not be the toughest guy in the room. It's all right.
Yeah.
And I grew up in an environment and in a time where the guys who were really tough celebrated the person who was going to church. They celebrated the person that was into sports. They would literally call me like Reverend Brown, could you say a prayer for me? Because I was a church guy.
Yeah.
And I know it's difficult. I know people used to rank on me all the time. I only had Old Navy. I never had the cool polo Tommy Hilfiger. I was a corny guy. And I tried to be tough for a time. It didn't work because it's just not me. I tried to be tough. I ended up getting stabbed up, almost died. I said, you know what? I'm cool.
Yeah, I'm cool on
that. I'm cool on that. So just accept it. And the real truth is, again, going back to my relationship with my dad, so many of our young men have a misconception of masculinity and manhood that they don't get a chance to really dig into. And for me, my turning point was I was trying to be that person. My father heard what I was getting into. And when I went to visit him when he was in prison, he said, "You're embarrassing me. You make me I don't feel proud of you as a son." Once he said that, I never got into any trouble anymore.
Yeah.
Because he told me he's not happy about where he is and he doesn't want me to be there. So trying to be tough, I get it. It's just not, it's not necessary. It's really not.
Well, we're saying, oh, hell no, to playing like the tough guy when you're not about that life. Young people, stop capping. Just be who you are and be in that lane supremely. And it makes me think of a quote I also saw on your IG where it talks about like what Black boys need. And it speaks to something that your dad said to you that you just mentioned, rest in peace, that love has never failed to turn around Black boys, right? And so love them so divinely and fiercely that your disappointment will kill them, right? And adore them so much that the last thing they want to do is disappoint you. And it made me think of that quote when you talked about your dad saying, "Don't embarrass me in these streets," right? "Don't disappoint me in these streets." And that was really a code for deep unconditional love. So shout out to dads infusing their own tough love in a healthy way. And again, I fully agree that sometimes our young people get caught up in a very toxic definition of masculinity. And masculinity, just like Blackness, is not monolithic. It doesn't appear in just one way. So shout out to also be an example of a way that you could be a tough guy without being a tough guy. Intellectually tough, right? Here for the people. And so our next micro segment is called Deuces. We're going to have you chuck up the deuces. I'm going to present to you 3 harmful things that are prevalent and realities in education. Maybe not in your lived experience, but certainly someone who's Black and brown. FYI, they are all harmful, brother, all of them. So it's going to get spicier and spicier to be able to eliminate one. But if you could wave your magic Dr. Sean F. Brown wand and remove one from the system tomorrow, which one would it be? Are you ready? And if I schedule these right and I sequence them correctly, they should get a little spicier and a little harder to answer. I'm not going to ask you your why because you don't need to justify your opinion in our house. What you say is what it is, point blank, period. You ready?
Gotcha.
All right, here we go. First one. All the Black staff are only the security, custodial, and cafeteria employees. I see a head shake. All the Black staff are skin folk, but not kinfolk. Or all the Black teachers only teach remedial and non-advanced courses. All 3 are harmful. Which one you chucking up the deuces to because you think it's the most harmful?
The first one.
Okay, all the Black staff are only the security, the custodians, and the cafeteria employees. All right, here's the next one. You're disconnected from youth culture. You don't know nothing about a Drake, Kendrick, beef. You're just in your own twilight zone. You're disconnected from the community you teach in. You just show up to work and you have no idea where you are, what the norms, the expectations, the cultural dynamics are, or disconnected from current teaching strategies. You're up there chalking and talking. You don't know nothing about a Socratic this or, responsive teaching. Which one
So
is
the
the
first
most?
one is disconnected from culture. The
Yep.
second is
Disconnected from the community you teach in, or disconnected from current teaching strategies.
I'd say the community.
Yeah, and I'm not going to ask why. If you want to know why, DM this brother at Dr. Sean Brown, and he'll tell you his why. I think I know, but we'll have a post podcast follow up about that. All right, here's the next one. You sweating, brother?
Yeah, this is good. It's very well scripted.
Okay, go. And listen, I know I caught you fresh after a vacation, so I'm not timing you. If you want to take some time to think, here we go. You ready? Teachers with a deficit-based mindset about students. Teachers who teach for the summers off, or teachers who work in low-income communities only until the loan forgiveness requirement is met.
Oh.
Because that's real. That's real. I'm going to go teach the district, don't say the number, and then when my loans get paid off, I'm going to go to that all-white community. And
wow. I'd say the first one.
Teachers with a deficit. Come on, deficit. Yeah. All right, here we go. Next one. Whitewash curriculum, white savior mentality, or white fragility. Which one got to go?
Oh, man. The curriculum.
Okay, here we go. Next one. Black male educator burnout. I know you talk about death of 1,000 microaggressions. So Black educator burnout, Black male educator sellout, or Black male student dropout.
The first one.
Black male educator burnout, gotta go. We chucking up the deuces. All right, two more. Here we go. Being treated as a checkbox. You know that you were hired to just fill a quota. Okay, we got a Black male check. Being kept in a box, right? You have cultural confines on how you can lead and teach. You got to stay within this box. Or being boxed out of opportunities for professional, no upward mobility. So being treated as a checkbox, being kept in a box, or being boxed out of opportunity.
The last one.
All right.
I really want to choose number 2 and 3. But I wish I could speak more, but I'm just going to say 2 and 3. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I'm eager to have a follow-up offline where you could tell me your why. And maybe this will help some of our viewers reach out to you. I know you also have a consultancy that you started, I believe. We'll speak about that in a second. All right. I have 2 more lies. Because how often do you have a Black male principal in the building? Here we go. Policing how our kids talk, policing how our kids dress, or policing how our kids act in a school building, because all 3 happen.
Policing how they act.
All right, and here's the last one. OSS, for my non-educator folks, that's out of school suspension. Performative SEL, that's just when you're on the surface acting like you want to connect with kids and be social, emotional, and have IQ, but you're not really about that life. Or surface level culturally responsive teaching. It's February, so we'll talk about Black history and then back to your regularly scheduled program. Which one got to go?
The last one.
Surface level CRT. All right, Dr. Brown, chuck up the deuces for me. You survived it. Maybe it wasn't as spicy as I said it would be, but you told us what had to go. You can hear about that brother's why by connecting with him offline. And for our last micro segment, another rapid fire. They say, you say, because so often in leadership or even in education, things are said, you are microaggressed, gaslight, and you have to stay professional and mask up and bite your tongue. But right now, we're going to give you the opportunity to clap back unfiltered to some commonly said things that you might have heard, or maybe you've never heard them, but we want to know what you would say if presented with this. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. You're from Brownsville. Your testimony is the exception to the rule for Black males, not the blueprint. You say
it's the exception because of your lack of ability to bring about my greatness.
That's 4 snaps. That's just 4 snaps. All right, here we go. They say angry Black man. You say
They say angry black man. I say a human being responding to trauma.
Come on now. Come on now. Okay. They say, I don't see color. You say,
Then you would have crashed.
oh, oh,
You'd you'd have crashed your car a long time ago.
come on, Wi-Fi, don't fail me now. All right. They say black kids are products of their environments. Like where you come from really matters. You say,
I say we are products of our environment, and that's why roses can grow out of concrete.
hello, shout out to Tupac's Book of Poetry. The rose that grew from concrete. They say, why only a green book for black folks? White, Hispanic, Asians, they need a green book too. You say,
I say if you study the African diaspora, you'd realize that the book is for you too.
ooh, come on with the mic drops, Dr. Brown. All right, two more. They say black male leadership wouldn't be so important if black fathers were more present. You say,
Black male leadership wouldn't be as important if there were more black fathers. That's the convoluted. Um, the deeper question is when or why do you believe that black fathers aren't as present as they'd like to be? And is there any systematic issues or reasons that that's happening?
come on, come on. They say, I know you reference and use hip hop albums like KRS-One, Big Pun, Jay-Z, but you don't need all that hip hop integration to get your point across. Kill that noise. You say,
I say that it's necessary to bring about the very best in our children. It's not necessary if you just want them to be average.
hello, hello, supreme mic drop. All right. So I know that we spent a lot of time talking about the traps and the tropes and the challenges of black male scholarship, black male leadership, but I want to end on an asset-based note and ask you this last question. What has been your biggest joy or some of the highlights in being a principal in your home community? I saw that you mentioned that the borough president just made you an honorary Dominican, and that made you super proud. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I wanted to also embed that. But what has been some of your biggest joys or highlights in being a black male principal in your home community?
I think one of my biggest joys that I still feel is not necessarily, like graduation rates and numbers, and I've done those things in the past. I love to see young men change. It wakes me up, and women and young girls as well. I just want to be clear about that. I serve everyone. But when you see a kid who was on the brink of dropping out, smoking every day, in gangs, angry, frustrated, and you shed tears with them and you cut their hair and you give them a sandwich or you teach them how to box or play basketball, and then they graduate and they come back and say that you helped them. I'm in heaven. That is just the best adrenaline high.
Yeah.
Is the best feeling on earth. So I think because I have so many friends and Aunt knows them, that when I serve my children, I think about I wish somebody would have served my friend this way before he did 25 years. I wish somebody would have served my friend this way before he got killed. So it's a very when you see a black man in this position, it's not just for a title. It's really not just for clout. It's a very deep spiritual, purposeful calling. So that's the stuff that gives me joy, is seeing lives change.
Well, what a supreme loss to the school community you've been serving, but also same side of the coin, what a supreme scoop for Uniondale to have you join their educational staff and for the young people whose lives you will undoubtedly impact. Just in the spirit of some youth culture, I want you to fill in the rest of this sentence. Sometimes you got to pop out and show people what? Sometimes you got to pop out and show them what?
Sometimes you got to pop out and show people that you should have never played in my face like that. Should have never did that.
And listen,
You
I'm not.
should have never.
Never.
Should
I
have
was
never
not the
did
one
that.
or the two. Okay.
Man,
Well, listen,
so
they not like us. They not like Dr. Sean F. Brown. It's been such a pleasure and a vibe to connect with you. I'm really excited to hopefully see you one day in person, in action, offline, online, however serendipitously the ancestors have it aligned. And I want to give you the last word. Anything you want to say to fellow Black male principals or leaders or educators to just encourage them to be uncompromising on their journey, just like you, before we go.
yeah. So for all my guys out there that are thinking about the position or thinking about going into education, and you have insecurities, and a lot of it stems from things that you went through when you were younger that you never really looked at. You just accepted some of the titles that they made about you. They said you were aggressive or you weren't smart enough or whatever it is. You can do it. It's not as difficult as people make it seem. The reason that I keep pushing forward is because I want to see what's so difficult. And I want to see if that PhD is really difficult. I want to see if writing that book is difficult. I want to see in every time that I took that step, I realized it wasn't. It's
Yeah.
all a myth. There's nothing behind the other door that's going to break you. So do it, push forward. It's going to be bumps along the road, but that's par for the course for a transformational leader like yourself. So keep doing it.
Well, listen, his dissertation is an ode to Nipsey Hussle, who we have here behind us intentionally. Shout out to hard work and dedication. Shout out to hustling and motivating. Shout out to all things that just elevate the culture by way of traditional roles and responsibilities. We had a Black male principal in the building, y'all. And not for nothing, Dr. Brown, Ant's going to be a guest on here because he too represents a unicorn or goat, being a rose that grew out of concrete. And we just can't thank you enough for talking to us about your journey to date, how you are uncompromising. You can follow this brother on IG at Dr. Sean Brown. Please grab his book. I mean, a book is a gift that lasts a lifetime. An educator, a principal, a parent, this green book needs to be on their home library for shelf and self-awareness. We just appreciate you. We wish you a dope rest of the summer on your transition to your new school community. And like we say here in our house, community is a verb. Otherwise, you just live in a neighborhood. So shout out to your verbing, your service, and all that you do to elevate the culture in your role as Black male principal.
Thank you so much. And
Yes.
as Biggie said, this goes out to all of the teachers, all the educators that told me I never amount to nothing. This is just specifically for you. Thank you.
Yes, that's for you. We not playing with you. And he's not playing with you. Yes, to end with Biggie. Thank you so much. Episode 7, Uncompromising. Stay blessed.
Thank you.